Hello everyone and welcome back to Long Live Rock and Roll Podcast. As usual, on the screen opposite me is my good friend Mr. Felipe Amorim. Felipe, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing great. How are you doing, Laz?
Excellent. Yeah, good. Thank you. Good. I can't wait to carry on this discussion because I was really enjoying it. For those who have listened to the episode 2 weeks ago, we were talking about when dinosaurs ruled the earth, and obviously we are not talking about T-Rexes and Stegosauruses and all that stuff. We're talking about the dinosaurs of rock music, the old bands who are still going, and this is just a discussion to basically find out, why. What's in it for them? What's in it for the fans? Is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Last week we touched on live performances. What is in it for a band if they're doing new music? You've got the money, you've got the nostalgia, you've got the addictiveness, the addiction to making music. And this week we're going to talk a bit more about sort of actual releases and actual bands in terms of what they've done and did it work or not. So Felipe, at the end of last week you started to discuss AC/DC.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do. So AC/DC is an interesting case because I think Angus Young said in an interview that it's wrong when people say that they've released 10 albums that sound the same, because they actually released 11 albums that sound the same.
Are they his words?
Yeah, that's Angus Young himself. And it is, and honestly, for a band like them, why would they sound any different? Right? It's not like that kind of music. It's like you just want to, have a good time and headbang to those songs, and jump and shout and sing along. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's like what we said on the last episode about Iron Maiden. A winning formula. Why change it?
Yes, exactly. I understand that for bands like them, you shouldn't. It's not that you shouldn't change, but what's the motivation for that? Why would AC/DC try to not sound like AC/DC? Having said that, so I still think it's kind of hard to stick to the formula, because sometimes people think, oh, you know what? If you just repeat yourself, oh, that's easy. Well, is it though? Like,
good point.
When you think about, for instance, country music and blues, those are genres that they have a very strict way of being played and written and performed. And the great names in those genres are people who can keep writing interesting and new stuff without escaping, from the basic rules of the style. So that's not that easy, So I think in rock and roll is the same. So when you think about AC/DC specifically, when they released Black Ice in 2008, they were already Dinosaurs, right? It feels like ages ago now. I think about 2008, right? But I'll tell you, my experience with Black Ice was like back in Brazil. I had a student who was like probably 12 years old, and he said, "Well, you know what? I want to learn Black Ice." I said, "What do you mean? The album?" So, yeah, I want to learn all songs in the album.
Wow.
That's us. Okay, cool. Let's do it then. So we've been for the whole album, and I thought to myself, so there's a young kid in South America who is into AC/DC in 2008.
Yeah.
So it's like, how did they manage to not only like find this new listeners, this new audience, but with their new material, right? It's not like the kids were listening to only Highway to Hell, Back in Black, those songs. They were listening to the new material. So I think that means there's still life in it.
Yeah. Well, I think another positive aspect of the situation you've just mentioned is that on top of that, what that then enables that young fan to do is to go back to the older albums and know that he's going to like them, or AC/DC will know that he will like them because it's the same kind of stuff.
You won't be disappointed if the band is sticking to the formula, and you might even find them better. I think what I liked, again, I'm going to keep talking about this album because the sound of the album is just great with the modern production techniques and the mixing and the whole equipment. It's just, in my opinion, it's a better sounding album than any AC/DC album, right? So that's the technical elements of it. and they're playing this as because we're talking about the relentlessly touring routines that those people have. There's no way their playing would get any worse. Actually, they got better as musicians.
Yeah.
They can play with more accuracy and this, and in their case, I believe they still have the energy, which is something you tend to lose with age. It doesn't happen with everyone. Some people, they actually get better and they still have the energy, they still have the love for what they're doing, and it comes across in the music. You can hear it, you can feel the vibe, I guess. So I think
Angus Young has batteries in his shorts that charge him up through his arse, and he just
he's got to have it. Yeah, it can't.
Yeah,
that's not.
You talk about Black Ice, which was 2008, but they released Power Up 2 years ago in 2020, and that did enormously well. People were so happy with that, and again, same kind of AC/DC, same kind of songs, no sort of 17-minute prog epics, but why change? We said this earlier. I think
why disappointing the fans?
Yeah, I think a really good example, and one I'd like to flag up. We spoke on the last episode about Iron Maiden, and I kind of did my own personal list of, I just want to say again, Iron Maiden is consistent. The songs are always good and they're always Iron Maiden-y, but as albums, some work better than others. Maybe more thought is put into the song list, how many songs to put on, stuff like that. But Metallica, I think, this is a really good example because what Metallica had, you guys remember when we did from our Metallica episode, we spoke about the timeline of Metallica, and from in the 80s, they had their thrash period. At the start of the 90s, they had their accessible metal period. In the late 90s, they had their kind of garage, grunge era. Then they did some sort of hybrid stuff like that in the early 2000s. But then in 2008, you got Death Magnetic, which, funnily enough, the same year as Black Ice. In 2008, you had Death Magnetic album, which was just a fantastic amalgamation of everything Metallica had done up to that point. And so they wrote the songs with all their experiences from the past 30 years, and they produced it in a modern setting. And the album was fantastic. In my opinion, I know it wasn't for everyone, but I just thought it was fantastic. And then
it doesn't have to be for everyone, does it?
No, of course not, yeah. Then 8 years later, they did another album called Hardwired to Self-Destruct, which was the same thing. I didn't think it was as good as Death Magnetic. It was, I thought it was a little incoherent in terms of the song order and all that stuff, but same thing. Giving the fans what they want. It was a really well-produced album, and you've got all these, not new Metallica ideas, but taking the best parts of everything they've done previously, sticking it into one album, just like Death Magnetic, and releasing it. So I think those are two really good examples for Metallica and AC/DC, where the newer stuff, despite the fact they are, quotation marks, the dinosaurs, this is good results. Felipe, do you know, are there any examples you want to talk about where the results haven't been good?
One of the bands I like the most, Rush, I think they had a solid career, but at some point, when they did, I don't remember the years, the dates of the releases, but they did Presto is a great album, and they started like going more into the keyboard stuff, more into like, it sounds more like, in terms of production, a lot more like pop music and modern electronic music, and the rock fans were disappointed, like the hardcore, rock and roll fans. They were rock like, no, we want to listen to the distorted guitars and high pitched vocals and kind of stuff. And then I think when they released, there's a great album they released when I've been to their tour. How do I forget the name of the album? My God, Vapor Trails. So that's a phenomenal album, and it's heavy as fuck. And I think when Alex Lifeson said to the other guys, "Enough with the keyboard shit. I just want to play the guitar. Let's make this loud, dirty, noisy." And there's like, double kick on the drums, like it sounds a bit like Judas Priest at some point. Like it's really like they heavy. And there were already Dinosaurs. I think 30 years of band, or close to 30 years on the road,
Yeah.
and they released that, and I saw them live playing those songs, and they were smashing it. And it feels to me like they were kind of unhappy with some stuff they did before. I said, okay, we need to push. We need to try something heavier now. We need to go back to the roots. I think that happens a lot with bands that keep experimenting, because we're talking about two completely different things. When we were mentioning AC/DC and Iron Maiden, those are bands who have the formula. They're happy with it. The fans are happy. No one expects them to do anything different. When we talk about Metallica or Rush or Pink Floyd, those guys are famous for trying new stuff.
Yeah, very good point.
And if you simply repeat the formula, then people don't actually want to buy it. The problem is when you go too far from your roots, then you actually, I think you probably feel the need to go back, and that's what Rush did. Maybe Metallica as well. Maybe even Pink Floyd with the Endless River, which the last album is just instrumental. Like it's just them playing, jamming studio pretty much. To some old tracks they had recorded by Richard Wright. So it's kind of, let's do something simple. Let's do something that we have done before, and it will probably work. And in most cases, I think it does. But again, the problem with an album is you don't actually know how good or bad the album is until you listen from start to finish. So it's tricky, isn't it? Also, if you release a bad album after like 4 or 5 like epic albums, it's kind of understandable. People expect your creativity to drop a little bit, and
there's a certain level of forgiveness there from the fans.
I think so. So I'm. It's difficult to point at albums that I kind of don't like when I think about it, because if I listen to an album and I don't like it, I completely forget about it. I go back to the stuff I like and listen to it again. It's interesting.
Here's a suggestion. Sorry, no, go on.
No,
I was just going to say, again, I haven't listened to this album, but I'm just doing this for my notes. Where have you gone? Okay, here is probably the dinosaur of all dinosaurs. This is the T-Rex of the rock and roll dinosaur world, all right? Bob Dylan.
Wow.
Yeah, right. First album, 1962. Yet since 2010, he's done 5 albums, and the latest was called Rough and Rowdy Ways, which was released in 2020. Bob Dylan's an interesting one, isn't he? Because we could do a whole episode on whether Dylan is a musician or a poet, but but he's a bloody conversation in himself. But there's a certain, go back to what I just said. Is he a musician or is he a poet? Because lyrically he is stunning. Can he sing? No, not really. Let's just be honest and sort of say, he is.
Oh, Laz Unleashed right there.
Another one. Okay. Right, another Laz Unleashed. I don't know. I feel like, I don't know if this is Laz Unleashed, because I feel like Dylan probably knows this. It's not me criticizing him. It's just like, so anyway, I don't think, I think Bob Dylan is more of a poet than an artist or music artist. Because
I'm going to put that phrase on a T-shirt with your name on it, and I'm going to send it to Bob Dylan.
And he'll wear it probably. He'll be like, "Yeah, that's true."
He would. Do you know what I mean? I think it's my dream that someone like him goes on social media or whatever and says, "Who the fuck are you guys?"
Yeah, and then we get forward. Yeah, exactly. But Bob Dylan, now he's interesting because there have been, any time he releases a new album, all the way his fans are there just saying, Bob, please stop. Like, just, we've had enough. But yet he doesn't. And this is what makes me think, when I said in the last episode, I said about, not the nostalgia, not that he wants to try and emulate, his classic albums, but maybe he just has so many ideas and he wants to get them out somewhere, and simply writing his lyrics down as poetry isn't good enough. So he wants to transfer them to music and release them. And even if 10% of his fans only like the new album, maybe he feels he's doing them a service by releasing it.
Well, I think for a guy like him, it's more like, you know what, I just want to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And I've seen this interview with Paul McCartney a few years ago where he says something about basically someone asking, "Are you doing it for the money or for the fame after all these years?" No, basically, no, the person asking, "Is it about money or fame?" Or actually, let me rephrase it properly. They said, "In the past, it was about money and fame. Why are you still doing it now?" And he said, "Money and fame," but as a joke, of course. But no, and basically, he ends by saying like, "Well, I've been doing this since I was like 20 or even younger than that, so I don't know any other life." That sums it up.
Yeah.
For a guy like McCartney, you can argue that some of his solo albums are not half as good as the stuff he wrote when he was playing with the Beatles. But does he have to be good, though? That's the question. I mean, does he have to be that good? I mean, obviously, you expect some quality. Do you expect the new McCartney album to be as good as Abbey Road? I don't.
No, of course.
That is the whole point. So if you keep your expectations to a decent level, then you're probably not going to be disappointed.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think I didn't manage to catch up with his stuff now because he keeps releasing stuff. He finishes an album and starts recording the next one, which I respect the guy for doing that because Abe Laborio Jr., who's his drummer, said in an interview about, I think that was like in 2002 or something. It was like already a long time ago. He said, "Well, it's really interesting for someone who has done so much for music. It's really interesting that he still wants to deliver. He still wants to do more."
Yeah.
And
that comes back to being an artist, right? Just constantly having this flow of ideas and ideas, lyrics, and music in your head that you just want to get out.
I think when you have like one album that it's not that good, it kind of challenges you to, or maybe I'll go back in studio and do something better next time.
Yeah.
The problem is if you release 2 or 3 consecutive albums that people don't like, and I think this maybe it's time to call it a day. But something I said before in the show probably is why not trying? Because why not try to do something new, or why not record an album if you have the time, the money, the facilities for it, if you want to do it, because you don't know what's going to happen. And if you don't do it, you would be thinking, well, what if I tried one more time? What if I tried to bring those new songs into life? And that could be done, but if you don't do it, you would never know. And that's one message to music fans out there: if you don't like it, don't listen to it again. So, don't be disappointed. My favorite artist had just released an album and I think it sucks. Okay, listen to the old stuff then.
Yeah.
Just don't think that. I don't think that like a bad album should ruin the band's reputation. They try. If it doesn't work, doesn't work. That's it. If it doesn't work for you specifically, don't listen to it.
This hits home for me because yesterday Slipknot released a new album and it was okay. Some good songs, but a lot of people complaining and saying this is not the Slipknot we know or love, and it's just very interesting to you say that because you're right, and I've never sort of considered it in that way. If you don't like it, go and listen to this stuff.
Mind you, Slipknot's not going to play the whole album live, the new one, probably, because they have so many classics, the songs that people expect them to play, so they're probably going to add 2 or 3 songs from the new album to the set list. So, it's go and buy a beer or go to the toilet when they're playing that one. Yeah, exactly. So then come back and
that's a good point,
classics.
I wanted to talk now about a gentleman who's obviously very important to the world of rock and roll and heavy metal, and his latest album. The gentleman is the well-known Mr. Ozzy Osbourne, who has just released an album called Patient Number 9. And something I found really interesting about this album, and I thought this was quite a clever technique because it's almost like so with everything we've said, we know his stuff we know his stuff now compared to the likes of Paranoid, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, Osmosis, Blizzard of Oz. It's not going to be the same level. We know this, but what has he done to combat that? We might have he might have thought, right, so I know that maybe a percentage of my listeners aren't going to listen to this new album because they don't like how I sound now. He has a huge list of guests on that album. Jeff Beck, Eric Clapton, Zakk Wylde on a few songs, and Tony Iommi. I think he's using his contact list to great effect here. He's released a brand new album, and probably we can all guess that the songs are not going to be of the quality of Sabbath and his solo stuff, the classic stuff. So he said, right, how can I get more ears in? Right, get some famous guests on. Very clever, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I why wouldn't you be curious to listen to an Eric Clapton solo in an Ozzy song? It's like
or a reunion of Iommi and Osborne.
Yeah,
why would you listen to that?
It does get people, interested in listening to it. So, and obviously, those guys they're good musicians and they are creative enough to do something that is, I would say, most likely better than the average. That's it, and that's the thing, though. I think the fact that those dinosaurs are still, walking the earth makes life harder for new acts. When you think about someone releasing new songs, and you think, well, Ozzy's still doing it, and there's some new guy trying to break into the world of rock and roll and play bigger gigs and stuff like that. And you think about it, imagine you're competing with people who have been doing that for 40, maybe 50 years, like this.
Their contact list. I mean, forget those guitarists there. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, it's like they are part of the industry for that long. They have all the money, they have all the influence, they have the name, the reputation, and don't forget about this, they have the knowledge to do it. It's not like they're just there because they're already famous. They know how to do it. That's why they became famous in the first place.
Yeah, that's a good point. Moving on perfectly from Ozzy Osbourne, one album I did want to touch on was Black Sabbath's 13.
It's on my list here, actually.
Yes, because that is an album I thought, God, what if we're gonna rank? Do you know what? When we release our book, we should do this. We should do a page of the best dinosaur albums, and what that means is albums released by bands that are 30 plus years old. I think this could be number one on the list. Guys, just so you know, every album we've mentioned, I'll pick a song, or I'll choose the most famous song from that album and put it in, just so you have a reference point of what to listen to. But 13 by Black Sabbath, my God. 2013, so obviously they started in 1970, so you got 70, 80, 90, 0, 43 years after their first album. And does it sound much different musically?
Well, that's the thing, because they basically went back to the formula of Black Sabbath and Paranoid, isn't it? Yeah. Intentionally. It's not accidentally, So basically, they had a producer saying, let's listen. He made them, what's his name? I forgot his name. My God.
Rubin?
My memory is terrible today. Yeah.
Rick Rubin.
That was him. Yeah. Rick Rubin. He made them listen to the first two albums. I think it's like, listen to what you guys were sounding like when you were younger, and I think you can still sound like that. And it sounds to me like that could have been their third or fourth album.
Yeah.
If you had a time machine and could send those songs back in time and say to the younger Black Sabbath, you guys should record these songs now, and it would be just perfect for that time.
You're right.
So, but music's timeless, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And, that seems to me like an example where everyone was happy. Sabbath got their money. They must have gotten the same thrill because of the music they were writing, because it sounded so much to their old days. The fans got what they wanted in terms of a new album that sounded like the classics. It was a win-win for everyone, and this is why I think it's just such a fantastic example of a dinosaur album that went completely right. Another one that I think got right that I want you to talk about, because I know it's probably on your list, is Whoosh by Deep Purple.
Oh yeah, right.
Talk to us a bit about that, because that was fantastic. Can I just say something quickly? Let me just say quickly that I love Deep Purple. I have this thing with artists where some of them I love for albums. So a gentleman called Cat Stevens, who had 3 albums in the 70s, Teaser and the Firecat, Tea for the Tillerman, and Catch Bullet 4. Those 3 albums mean the absolute world to me, and all 3 of them are in my top 20 albums of all time. Don't like anything else he's done. But because of those albums, those three, I love the guy. And the same for Deep Purple. For Made in Japan, Machine Head, In Rock, and Fireball, I love that band. Don't really care for much else they've done, especially the later stuff. But Felipe pointed me in the direction. He said, Laz, you got to check out Whoosh. And I was like, it's just like, it's a late Deep Purple album. I don't know if I'm really going to like it. And you're like, Laz, just listen to it. And my God, it was brilliant. Talk to us about Whoosh.
Well, do you know what? Just to talk about Whoosh, I'm going to talk about Perpendicular, which was, if I'm not wrong, the first album they did with Steve Morse on guitar. That album came with a lot of anticipation and a lot of expectations from the fans, because it was like, how is this new guitar player who's completely different, how is he going to affect the band's songwriting? And he did affect a lot. Sometimes I feel like Screaming is one of my favorite songs, and it's on the album. And that's Steve Morse's contribution to the band, clearly. And obviously, since that album, they do have their new sound with Morse, and he became part of the band. So it gets to a point like, okay, I know it's this kind of more modern, like virtuoso guitar playing, and then with the old school classic rock, Deep Purple. But they are not a band that tried to stick to a formula. I think they don't care. I've seen Roger Glover say in an interview that fashion doesn't like them. It's not that they don't like fashion. Fashion, they're not trendy. It's not what they are, and they don't want to be, and they don't have to. And also, Ian Pace said like a few times that he believes there's enough people out there to buy this stuff they do, so they don't need to adapt. They don't need to try to do. They can just do whatever they want to do, and they jam when they're writing songs. So I think everything they do is kind of unpredictable, even for the band. Even for them, because if they're jamming when they're writing songs, you never know what's going to come out. I think Whoosh, it was like mind blowing for me, because I had the same sort of, I was with the same sort of attitude as, I'm just going to have a listen to one or two songs, and then I could stop listening. I was like, this is actually good. My opinion, it does not resemble Deep Purple at all.
Yeah.
It's like
it's just like a new entity, doesn't it?
But it's not like they trying too hard to sound different. It's just natural. They just that's what we're doing now.
That's a really good point. Yeah,
Ian Gillan can't reach some of the notes he could in the 70s. Think about it. Obviously at his age, you wouldn't be able to just sing it the same way or with the same technique as when you were 25. So it's just not possible. But he started to write melodies that suit his voice now. It just sounds natural. It doesn't sound like, listen to me trying to sound like the younger version of me that you guys all know. It's like, no, I'm a senior musician. I'm doing this. The only way I can do it.
Yeah, that's a great point, man. I mean, I think, like you said, the album did sound natural. It didn't sound like they were trying to be anything. And that has to be the reason why it worked so well, because, like I said, I'm not in general a fan of those later albums by the Dinosaur bands, but this one was just so different. It really blew me away. Quick, go on.
Yeah, you got to think it's like a slightly different subject here. Some bands, they didn't manage to become dinosaurs, like the Beatles. We're talking about McCartney, but he's a separate entity, as a solo artist, and he doesn't need to prove anything. But the fact that the Beatles break up when they were not even 30 years old, maybe Lennon was 30, I don't know. I think McCartney was 28, 29. So when they break up, they were so young, and they were on a solid evolution. If you listen to the first album, the first, maybe 3 or 4 albums, but when you listen to Abbey Road and compare to, let's say, A Hard Day's Night, Abbey Road is so much deeper and complex and more interesting, in my opinion, right? So, they got to that point, and you have like Let It Be and Abbey Road as the last, studio attempt, and then they say, "That's it, we're done," for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And then there's no way anything bad is going to come with the Beatles' name on it, because they were lucky enough to split at that point.
I was going to ask you. It's hilarious. When I was about to change subject, I was going to ask you about this, and it was another band I was going to mention. So everything you said about the Beatles is correct. They didn't have the chance to become dinosaurs, and is that a good thing? Because look at their legacy, man. Does anyone have a bad word to say about any Beatles music? I don't think, you've got people who don't like the Beatles, but maybe the first albums are too rock and roll, all right. But what happened after that? They changed, they progressed, they pioneered, they invented, they experimented with recording techniques, and they got to the pinnacle of pop music with Abbey Road. It's just stunning.
Yeah.
The other band... Sorry, go on.
No, and I think the Stones are the opposite of that because they managed to carry on. But Mick Jagger's a really clever guy. He made sure they became famous for their stadium performances.
And that is the longevity of that. Yeah.
Yeah, because they are a live band. Like, you want to see the Stones on stage playing the classics. You don't care if they're releasing something new or not. They actually released some good stuff recently, but it's not. The point is you want to see them on stage.
That's a clever tactic, because then you don't have to rely on releasing and writing new music every few years, do you? Which is very cool.
No, exactly.
So the other band I was going to mention in the same breath as the Beatles, and unfortunately this band only didn't become dinosaurs because of a death, and that's Led Zeppelin. Because if you think about it, I mean, I think you kind of got to a stage where they were not dinosaurs because of the age, but in terms of the music not fulfilling the fans' needs. You started getting there, I feel. Would you agree with me? I think I know we both listen to a lot of Zeppelin, but maybe you know more about them and the fan base. Was people getting a little disappointed with albums like Coda and Presence?
Yeah, well, Coda was after John Bonham's death, wasn't it? So kind of
studio. But Presence and In Through the Outdoor.
Presence and Through the Outdoor, yeah. So I think that, some people didn't like, In Through the Outdoor is very keyboard heavy, isn't it? For Zeppelin's standards. For the simple reason that John Paul Jones was taking over because Jimmy Page wasn't in good shape for performing and writing. But it's just the fact that there's still some innovations in there and they're still playing well. I think Through the Outdoor, I like the album. I really like it. But they're flirting a little bit more with pop music, but at that point, is acceptable, isn't it?
Yeah. Can I ask you a question? As tragic as it was, did Bonham's death save Led Zeppelin's legacy?
Yes.
Because it stopped them, the journey they were going on, going a bit pop, going a bit keyboard heavy. His death stopped that.
Also,
it's not a good thing in any way, but it saved their legacy, do you reckon? Because they are still now considered one of, if not the greatest rock band of all time.
You can't touch them. It's just like they've managed to... The tragic end of their career kind of wrapped up a collection of great songs and albums.
Yeah. So it didn't allow them to write more that people would have been disappointed with.
And also, when they got together, I think it was really clever that Page and Plant got together as Page and Plant when they released new stuff.
But then, think about the reunion gig.
Well, the reunion gig was phenomenal.
Huge.
Yeah, but then that's them playing the old stuff, and people were talking about the new album. And again, I would like to see Zeppelin doing something new. Why not? But it's kind of cool that they belong to history as a band. Like, that's it. Yeah. Zeppelin is not here. They didn't become dinosaurs in that sense. Robert Plant still performing, but it's Robert Plant, his solo career.
Yeah,
he started after Zeppelin. He wasn't simultaneously to Zeppelin. He was something different. So I think it's tragic, but in terms of the legacy, obviously not. It wasn't. It was really a big tragedy for music that John Bonham died at such young age, because he could have done loads of stuff post Zeppelin as well. But in terms of the timing for the bands,
and it's the same with the Beatles, isn't it? Not a death, obviously, but just deciding to wrap up their career.
Yeah. Because they could have continued with another drummer, right? But it was like, could they? No one would accept, would they? So it's just the fact that
Jason was too young back then, wasn't he?
Exactly. Yeah, way too young. So the fact that So not everyone managed to get to the point that they become dinosaurs, right? Here's a point. When those people are still doing, like, I'll mention Guns N' Roses here because they are touring like relentlessly, but they're not releasing too much new stuff. Like, I think they released it. I'm not really up to date with them, but they released a single. I don't know, but
Yeah,
I don't think
yeah.
no one is that interested in the new Guns N' Roses stuff. People want to go and see them playing Sweet Child of Mine.
Yeah.
And I think Axl Rose understood that. The problem they have is, like, people criticize Axl a lot, like, oh, his voice is not the same again. And I think you got to put it into perspective. You know, do you want to see your heroes on stage? Are you prepared for them to not be the version that you know? Because age is a factor.
Yeah. It's a really funny story I've got in that same thing. I went to see. So for those, having just mentioned him, those who don't know who Cat Stevens is, he was like a 70s folk singer, but then he converted to Islam and he changed his name to Yusuf Islam, and he's been writing all this kind of religious music since then and up until now. And a few years ago, I saw him as Yusuf Islam doing the Cat Stevens tour, where he played all of the Cat Stevens stuff, and I saw him live, and his age had caught up to him. It was a fantastic show. I had such a wonderful time. But he sang a song. Do you know the song "Morning Has Broken"?
No, I don't know that.
No,
one.
Okay, it'll be in the playlist for everyone. But it's a church song that he converted himself, and he sings. There's a few verses, and it's all the same. It's just a verse and then a piano part, then the same verse, and it just goes on like that. And he got to a point where he forgot the words, or he started the wrong verse. He went, "Morning has brought," and he stopped live in front of 1,000 people and goes, "Sorry, sweet the rain's new fall." And so he was like, he forgot the verse, but he corrected himself. And it was like, why do we need to forget that these guys are old? We don't need.
Yeah.
I hope, what I'm saying is, I hope no one was there and said, "Oh, terrible, he shouldn't be doing that." Age is a factor, and these guys are artists. These guys have been bringing sweet music to our ears. Well, I got into Cat Stevens because of my dad. So he's been bringing sweet music to my dad's ears, who then showed it to me, and now the music is sweet in my ears. I don't care. He's old, man. I don't care the lyrics. It's like, it's part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So there's so many people criticized Paul McCartney's voice, and I've seen the same with Elton John when he did something on TV or whatever. People like, and I said, do you understand that those guys don't need to be there performing for you? And they're not there to please you. So I think my point would be, like, if you don't want to see an old man on stage playing his classics, just don't go to the gig.
Just listen to the records. Yeah, exactly.
Listen to the records. The records are still there. And I believe, to be honest, well, I don't know if you have anything else you want to say, but I wanted to wrap this episode up with the title that we decided for this as a question. Okay. Do the dinosaurs still rule the world?
Great question.
What do you think?
The answer, I think, is yes, because we are still holding them to standards. Because we are still holding, despite the fact his voice probably auto-tuned, we are still holding Ozzy up as the king of metal. Not for the music he's currently producing, but because he was the voice of metal throughout the 70s and 80s, and he is still here. I think the fact he is still alive is a huge deal. Iron Maiden, yes, we've got hundreds of metal bands coming through now, and they don't sound anything like Iron Maiden, but they all want to get to Iron Maiden's success level. Same for Metallica. AC/DC, rock and roll band, who do you still aspire to be like? AC/DC. Why? Because they're 40 years into their career and they're still writing. Is it all good? I don't know. I don't listen. But so, yes, I think dinosaurs. Do you know what it's like, actually? It's more like, I don't know. I feel like it's more like the mafia, wherein they're kind of, I don't know if you've ever done any research on the mafia, but all of the crime families, the 5 crime families of America, all the bosses are really old. When you look at Vito Corleone and Godfather Paul, they're old. And it's like they're the head of the family because they've got the experience, they know what to do in certain situations, and they've got the respect of other people. And I think the same applies to all these bands. Dylan, Ozzy, Maiden, Sabbath, Pink Floyd, The Stones, Paul Simon. He released an album in 2018. His first one was 1964. I think my little comparison there was pretty good, that they're like the heads of the family. They're old. they can't go out and assassinate people, but they
Exactly.
can. But they still command respect.
Yes, and most people still look up to them, so that especially young musicians. And I think, yeah, I agree with you. I think the Dinosaurs are still ruling, and most of them are doing a great job, especially live. And it's kind of a gift, to all of us rock fans, that we can still, because rock is going to be, like classical music in a few years, really, because most of those guys are going to be gone.
Yeah.
And the fact that we can still say, well, I belong to that moment in time when those guys were still there. So like the guys that my dad was listening to when he was young, they still around performing. And it's insane to think about that. So
that's a great point, man.
Great point. I just want to say one thing. I started the previous episode talking about the first gig I've been to. I'm going to talk about the last gig I've been to, because I'm, playing every night, doing stuff. It's really hard to find time to go to a gig. One day, my good friend Tom Brundage, so shout out to Tom for that, gave me a ticket to see Roger Daltrey. And I'm a big The Who fan, never had a chance to see him. So that was like a month or 2 months ago, I don't know. I went to the Palladium in London, and his voice was simply amazing all the way through the gig. And he's almost 80 years old or something like that. I don't know. It's like, I mean, he was around when the Beatles were around, when he's like the beginnings of British rock music, and he doesn't have to prove anything.
No.
And he was like, I'm doing this tour because, my band, they need to make some money, after lockdowns and stuff.
Yeah.
He wanted to get those guys on the road. He doesn't need the money. He doesn't need the fame. He was super relaxed on stage, like chatting to people, answering questions. It was so much fun. And I'm glad he's still performing. So yes, he's a dinosaur and he still rules.
Fantastic. Well, man, that's a beautiful place to end the episode. We started the last one with your first gig. We'll finish this one with the with your last gig. I think, we said this when we were planning this episode. This does not have to be the last one of this discussion. Listeners, we've spoken about the albums that me and Felipe like and consider from our favourite bands. Please get in touch. Tell us about the Dinosaur album or the Dinosaur bands and the albums that you think were really good, even though they were already dinosaurs, or the albums you think were bad. Tell us. The email address is in the show notes, or you can comment on our social media. Let us know. And then the next time we do one of these, when we do part 3 of When Dinosaurs... Do you know what? I love that title, man. When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth. So I'm definitely going to do that. And maybe in a couple of months' time, or maybe half a year from now, we'll do another one. We'll do part 3, and then you've got options for part 4, 5, whatever. Tell us what you like about your dinosaur bands and the albums and all that stuff, and we'll definitely get into it next time. But yeah, fantastic place to end it, man. Thanks for that discussion, really good, and thanks for the topic, really enjoyable. As usual, find us on the internet, search us, and you'll find all our social media sites. Get involved with the conversation. Let us know what you think. Please like, subscribe, and give us reviews on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. It really helps us climb up the charts and get seen by others. So we'd really appreciate that. Thank you for joining us.
And many thanks to everyone who's been downloading episodes and sharing and talking, because we're actually getting more, more response, more results out of this than we expected, for sure. So it's really cool. We're doing this because we love these conversations. We love doing the podcast. And it's really cool. There's quite a few people out there downloading and listening. And sometimes I meet people like, at the blues bar where I play, and it's, oh man, I've listened to the last episode. Really cool stuff. So thanks for everyone who has been following us since we started, and keep on rocking, everyone.
I echo Felipe's sentiments. Yeah, thank you everyone for all of the downloads and everything. We really appreciate it. We're an independent podcast. We do this because we love music. So yeah, as usual, take care, see you next time, and long live rock and roll.